Morning, everyone. It's good to be here, isn't it? We've got a question. I'm glad Neil thinks so. Yeah. Who are you? That's a song, isn't it? It's a song by The Who. But who are you? Who are we? Who am I? Some people like to trace the family trees, don't they? They like to see who they are. Julie, she told me before you've been how far back have you got, Julie? 1700. Anybody can beat that? Can anybody beat 1700s? No, that's right. Yes, that's pretty good. So I know where to come if I need my shoes mending. Yeah. So people like to do that. People like to look into the past to see where they've come from, to see how they've got to where they are now. To look at the ancestors. Maybe you've discovered that you're 168th in line to the throne. Maybe you've discovered that you're related to Dick Turpin. I don't know which is the most favourable. That's up to you. But we like to look at where we've come from. When we look at the programme that's on TV, it likes to present people who are confident, people who know who they are. If you watch Dragon's Den, if you go into the den, you've got to believe what you're presenting, aren't you? You know, if you go in and you're not sure, and you say, well, I'm not really sure if it's a good idea or not, then you're not going to get anywhere. You're going to get kicked out. You've got to believe it. Even if it's the worst idea going, you've got to believe in yourself. The world likes people to be to know who they are. Likes people to be self-confident. And there's nothing wrong with that, nothing wrong with being confident. But what if you're not? What is God looking for? What is God looking for in us? We look at the Bible and we see that the type of people that God uses is as varied as a number of different people what there are. What I'm looking at today actually comes from the back of what Neil looked at a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if you can remember what he was speaking about. I'll not test you. But he looked at the account of Jacob when he wrestled with an angel. Bonus points for anybody who can tell me the song by a well-known Irish group that mentions that. First person to tell me. First person to tell me, I'll buy you a cake at the back afterwards. And it's not Westlife. You've got to tell me the song to get the cake. And you can't Google it either. So Neil reminded us of this account where Jacob wrestled with this angel. And he reminded us that Jacob's name, it meant deceiver. It meant supplanter, someone who takes someone, a bit of a Del Boy character, weren't he? A bit of a wheeler and a dealer. He liked to get things by a bit of deceit. Jacob was quite confident, but actually his confidence was misplaced. And so as Neil were looking at this the other week, it made me wonder about the types of people that God used. I'm not going to go the same ground, but I used that, what Neil was saying, it was a sort of springboard to look at what type of people does God use. If you look in Hebrews 11, it's a well-known chapter. It talks about faith in the Bible. It talks about all this great list of people who had great faith. They showed great acts of faith. And it goes through the whole list. It looks like people from the Old Testament and the heroes of the faith. But when you look a little bit deeper into this group of people, this amazing people, we see that quite a mixed bunch of people. What type of people do we get? We get some people who are drunkards, some people who doubted, they doubted God, some people who were weak, some people who were overconfident, some people who were quite immoral and quite promiscuous, some people who were murderers. In fact, if you look at, you sometimes see all these classics, films from the Old Testament, If actually they did a proper film of the Old Testament, it'd be 18 certificate. It wouldn't be like your Saturday afternoon thing. There's all sorts of goings on in there. It makes your hair curl if you read some of it. And these people, they were the people of faith, people who God called out from that and he used them. People so mixed, they come from every walk of life. People with their limitations, but their limitations didn't stop God from using them. God wasn't held back by where they came from. He didn't leave them where they were. I'm not saying that that's a list to aspire to doing that type of thing, but God took them from where they were and he used them and they became people of faith. And some of them failed God even after he'd called them. But that didn't disqualify them. And that's good news. If there's any good news, and I'm glad about that when we fail, that we're not disqualified, that when we've got a past that's murky, that doesn't rule us out. When we mess up, even when God's used us, then we're not disqualified. God still uses us. Each of us can be part of God's plan. And the limitations that we've got in our own life don't stop that from happening. Because it's not about who we are anyway. That's never the point. It's about who God is. Yeah. So if it was about who we were, then we'd be in a bit of trouble. But it's not. It's about who God is, how amazing God is. And the thing is that when we start to think about the labels that have been put on us, we can have all sorts of labels that's been put on us by other people, by ourselves. And we can think about them. But God doesn't look at the labels, what people put on us. He can restore that which is broken. He can restore and renew us and transform us. He can transform all that which is broken. And so, with all this in mind, I'm going to look at two people this morning. I'm going to come back in a few minutes to Jacob, who Neil spoke about a couple of weeks ago. But first off, I want to look at Gideon. Gideon from the Old Testament. It's found in Judges. We're going to read from Judges. Judges chapter 6, verse 11 through to 16. And this is what it tells us about Gideon. Now the angel of the Lord came and sat under the terebinth tree, which was in Ophrah, which belonged to Joash the Azurite. You've got to pretend that you know how to say that, but I didn't pretend very well. I like that picture, like the angel of the Lord is sat under the tree, and he's sort of watching Gideon, and Gideon's not aware of it. Just imagine that he's going to jump out all of a sudden and shout, boo, make him jump. But this picture is the angel of the Lord who sat under the tree watching Gideon. The angel of the Lord appeared to him and said to him, "The Lord is with you, mighty man of valor." Gideon said to him, "Oh my Lord, if the Lord is with us, why then has all this happened to us? And where are all his miracles which our fathers told us about, saying, did not the Lord bring us up from Egypt? But now the Lord has forsaken us and delivered us into the hands of the Midianites." Then the Lord turned to him and said, "Go in this might of yours, and you shall save Israel from the hand of the Midianites. Have I not sent you?" So he said to him, "O my Lord, how can I save Israel? Indeed, my clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my father's house." And the Lord said to him, "Surely I will be with you, and you shall defeat the Midianites as one man." Gideon didn't want to be a leader. I know the feeling. He wanted to hide away. He wanted to be in the background. When the angel of the Lord appeared to him, he was hiding. He was actually threshing wheat in a winepress. If you know anything about that, then probably the worst place to thresh wheat was in a winepress. I mean, threshing wheat, it was a process of sort of beating the wheat, shaking it vigorously so that the wheat, the good stuff, and the chaff, the not so good stuff would separate, and the wind would come and would blow the chaff away. And so it was quite a bit of back-breaking work, but even more so when you're doing it in a winepress, because you want it to be in an open space where the wind would come. A winepress was like a pit in a sense. So it wasn't a good place to thresh wheat. But Gideon was afraid. He was scared. He was scared of the Midianites, who were the enemies of the Israelites. And he was scared and so he was cowering away. And so when the angel approaches Gideon, and he says to him, and he calls him, "You mighty warrior, you mighty man of God." He didn't much look like a mighty warrior, like a mighty man of God, hiding away. But the angel of the Lord spoke truth into his life, and he prophesied into Gideon's life. The angel said to Gideon, "The Lord is with you." It almost seemed to Gideon like the angel was making fun of him. If the Lord is with me, if the Lord is with us, then why has all this happened? Why are we in such a mess? He's saying. Everything seems to be going wrong. As one modern translation puts it, if God is with us, why is everything gone pear-shaped? It's a very modern translation. I've just translated it. Do you ever feel like that? Well, you're in good company, because Gideon felt like that. Other people in the Bible felt like that. If God is with us, why has all this happened? And he could list it. The miracles that happened in the past, they're not happening, Gideon's saying. All this stuff that happened in the past, we can't see it happening today. Why is this happening if God is with us? Gideon looked at his circumstances, and his people were in circumstances that seemed to say, God isn't with you. But the angel is saying, look beyond the circumstances. Look behind that. Our circumstances are not an indication as to whether God is with us or not. We use circumstances and we use them as a barometer. And if things are going good, then we think, yeah, well, God's blessing us. If things are not going so well, then we think, where's God? But our circumstances are no indication of whether God is with us or not. God told Gideon that he was going to rescue Israel from the Midianites. But Gideon argued back, and he got another excuse. He said, well, I'm from the weakest family, the weakest clan in Israel. And from my family, I'm the weakest of all the people. Who am I that you can use me to deliver the Israelites from the Midianites? I'm the least, I'm a nobody. Do you have excuses why God can't use you? Well, Gideon could beat you. He'd got better reasons. Got better reasons than you. He'd practiced them. You can't use me. God, you must be wrong. What sort of person does God use? He uses people like Gideon, people who are weak. He uses people like you and me. And the thing is, all the people that God calls, then he equips. God isn't limited by the things that limit us. God doesn't let the things that would stop us stop him. All too often we believe the labels that have been put on us. Labels that can hinder what we do. Those labels are not what God has put on us. We look back in the Bible and we read events that happened in a different time. It's in a different culture. It's in a different time. And we think, how can these events have an impact in 21st century in Barnsley? The people of the Bible knew nothing about life in Tarn, did they? But what is still true, whatever the circumstances, human nature is the same. And the people in the Bible had human nature. They had joys, they had fears, they had worries. They had shed their tears just like we do. They faced the same struggles that we face. They had family problems like we have family problems. They had all the things that we face. James in his epistle speaks about Elijah. And he tells us that Elijah was a man with a nature like ours. That means that he wasn't some superman. He didn't have special powers. He wasn't immune to the struggles that we face, yet God used him. And it's the same for all the people in the Bible. They were normal people. They were people who had a nature like ours. Some of them had fiery temperaments. Some of them were reserved. Some of them liked to sink into the background. But they were people just like us. Men and women who laughed and cried and had the full range of emotions. And people put labels on them. And people tried to limit them. They tried to limit what they could do. But God says, no. No. You're not limited by the labels that have been put on you in the past. What is it that's happened in your life that tells you that God can't use you? Whatever it is, then you're wrong. The thing that you think disqualifies you is a thing that actually makes you uniquely qualified. It gives you a perspective that others don't have. You can be there for others who've gone through that. Peter, he denied Jesus 3 times. Peter probably thought, that's it. I'm disqualified. I can never go back. Peter was the first person at Pentecost to speak and to preach a powerful sermon. Peter was restored. His failure didn't disqualify him. It actually meant that he could understand when others struggled, when others denied Jesus, probably when they were persecuted, and he could say, you know what? I denied Jesus as well. I denied him, and he restored me. The Lord is with you, mighty man or mighty woman of God. You might think that sounds like a bad joke. But let them words speak into our lives, because some of us need to hear that. Yeah. Mighty man of God, mighty woman of God. And you think, nobody sees me. I'm insignificant. And God says, you're a mighty person of God. We think because circumstances didn't work out how we expected or hoped, that God can't use us. And sometimes it can be hard to see what God's doing. But God's apparent inaction doesn't mean that he is inactive. He's working. He's working in our town. He's working in our church. He's working in our lives. He's not just starting to work. Often when we see something happening, we see God moving in a very obvious way. We think God's starting to move. No, he's not starting to move. God is always moving. God is always moving. It's just that he starts to move in a way that we expect him to move. In a way, he starts to do the things that we think he should do. You're a mighty man or mighty woman of God because God's Holy Spirit lives in you. if you're a child of God. And that same Spirit that raised Jesus from the dead is alive in you. He's never stopped working in our lives. Gideon would go on to deliver the Israelites from the Midianites. God would use him, and he will use us if we allow him to. So on to Jacob. As I said, when Neil spoke about Jacob the other week, I got the idea for what I was going to say today, because it made me think, who does God use? And we see this man, this Jacob, who all his life is just a deceiver. He's getting what he gets, where he can by deceit, and yet God calls him out, and God has a plan for him. I think the account that Neil spoke about the man who turned out to be an angel, who turned out to be God, who wrestled with Jacob, I think it's a fascinating account, and it's a strange account. If you weren't here the other week, then go back and listen to Neil's sermon, because it's worth listening to. Then just sometime this week have a listen to it. But the part I want to touch on is how the encounter with God changed Jacob. God gave him a new name. Genesis 32, verse 28. God said, "Your name will no longer be called Jacob. From now on, you will be called Israel, because you have fought with God and men and have won." God is saying, you have been called a deceiver. You've been called somebody who takes things by deceit. That is not the name I've given you. I'm giving you the name Israel. You are a prince with men, a prince with God. You are not who you've been told you are. Jacob goes away from that life-changing encounter and promptly seems to forget what God has said to him. For the next few chapters, we read about Jacob, and that is the name he uses, Jacob. God's just said, "I've given you a new name," and then he goes back and he uses Jacob. And no offense to anybody who's called Jacob. God's given him a new name. 3 chapters later, in Genesis 35, God appears to him once again. He's at Bethel. And he says, "Your name is Jacob, but you will no longer be called Jacob. Your name will be Israel." So he named him Israel. Get a bit of a sense of deja vu. It's almost word for word what God has said 3 chapters earlier. From that time on, he starts to use the name Israel. But it took a while for him to get there. And sometimes it's still used interchangeably, but the name Israel, he uses it from that time on. We can be like that at times. We can have an encounter with the living God. We can experience God, and we can go away, and we can go back to being how we were. Have you ever heard it said? I might have said it myself. If you have an encounter with God, you can't be the same again. Actually, you can. Jacob had an encounter with God, and he went back to being just how he was. But God came to him again, and God wasn't prepared to leave him like that. Of course, if God meets with us, then we should respond to him. We should respond to what he has to say to us. God was saying to Jacob, "You are no longer a deceiver." That's what the name meant. Jacob meant deceiver. In time, he would be the father of a whole nation, and they would take on that very name that he was given. But God came to him again to remind him of what he'd previously said. Do we sometimes need to be reminded of what God has done? We should know better. I should know better, but I forget. I forget what he's said. I forget what he's done. I forget the great things of the past, what God has done for us. You'd think that with a name that meant that, and names had a significance in Bible times that they don't particularly do now, but with a name like that told him that he was a deceiver, you think he'd be glad to swap it, but he hung on to it. Maybe God is calling you into something new, and we're holding back. We like things as they are. Jacob liked the comfort of being called deceiver because he knew just exactly how to go about that. He knew what his life involved. He was comfortable like that. But he needed to own what God called him into. He needed to take hold of it. Maybe the label that had been given to him stuck. He'd been so used to it that he just lived up to it. And he didn't believe he could break away. But God came and he told him and he urged him to believe, you are not a deceiver. That is not what I've called you to be. That's in your past. Others might have called you by that name, but it's not the name that I've given you. We've got to be careful not to own the things that God didn't put on us. We need to take that on board as a church. The church together. We are called to be God's people. Don't own those things that God has not put on us. Don't be defined by the labels that others have put on you. Weak, nobody, useless. They might have been used. You might use them about yourself. Don't be defined by them. Put them where they belong. Put them in the rubbish, in the bin. Throw them out because that's what they are. They're no good. They're rubbish. Those labels are not what God has given you. It's not what God has got for your life. Don't define yourself by the things that others or that you yourself have put upon you. Why do we hold back? Why do we sometimes fail to move forward? Sometimes we believe what's been said. We believe the negative words. We believe the things that others have said about us. We believe the words that we've said about ourselves. Maybe you in the past you thought you heard God speaking. You thought he was calling you into something, and you thought, no, because God can't use somebody like me. God doesn't call somebody like me. Well, he does. That's the very thing that he specializes in. So he comes to you again and again, and he says, just get rid of the labels. Don't believe them. And he might have spoken in the past and it got snatched away because you thought, no, it can't be me. But it is. So is God calling you into something new? Sometimes we're scared to believe it. Is it really God? Sometimes we need to step out of the boat and walk on the water. When Jesus walked on the water in the storm, Peter was in the boat and he said, Lord, if it's you, tell me to come to you on the water. And so Jesus replied to Peter and he called him to come to him to walk on the water. And Peter got out of the boat and he walked on the water. A few moments later, he looked at the storm around him and he took his eyes off Jesus and he sunk. But Peter was the only one of the disciples who walked on the water. We can look at Peter's failure, but Peter succeeded because none of the other disciples did that. I don't believe there's anybody else, if I'm wrong, correct me, in the whole of the Bible, apart from Jesus and Peter, who walked on the water. Peter was the only person. He stepped out of the boat. For that moment, he walked on the water. What did that feel like? So that account is not one of failure. It's actually one of tremendous faith. Don't be afraid to step out because you might fall. You might fall. So what? Get back up again. I've fallen, I've stumbled numerous times. Even this week, numerous times this week. We're not defined by that. Peter learned about trusting Jesus. And he did succeed in walking on the water, if only for a short time, but he succeeded in it. Don't be afraid to respond to God's call. Don't be afraid because of your past failure. Don't be afraid because you think I might fail, so I'm not even going to try. Labels that were put on us right back in our childhood can affect us today. No matter how old we are, the things that go back right to our earliest memories, they can still impact us powerfully. The label that Jacob had, it went back to his birth, to the day of his birth. But don't be defined by that. Jacob didn't expect to change, but God said, no, you are a prince with men and with God. We need to be careful not to draw sort of a strange type of comfort in the label that's been given to us. Jesus once went to a paralyzed man, and before he healed him, he asked him a strange question. Do you want to get well, he said. Why would he ask such a question like that? It's almost an insult, isn't it? Do you want to get well? Well, of course he wants to get well, but Jesus saw into him, and perhaps he saw that he'd become used to his situation. He'd become comfortable in his situation. And so that was a danger, and he needed to realize, I want to get well. So don't get used to the labels that have been put on you. Take them off. God puts new names, new labels on us. Chosen, called, loved. For you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession, that you may declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his wonderful light. You are a chosen people. As a church, we are chosen. We've been hearing lately, we are a church. God's word is to the church. We're not individuals doing our own thing. God calls us. We are a chosen people. God has chosen us. You might think, who would ever choose me? But God chooses you to be a part of his church. We have a royal priesthood. We don't have a priest in this church. We don't have to, if you want to go to God, you don't have to go to Paul to intercede for you. You don't have to go to somebody else to intercede and to take you to God. Because when Jesus died, the veil of the temple was torn in two, and that symbolized the separation between God and people. You couldn't go into God's presence because he was too holy. But Jesus died, and that separation ended, and we can come straight into the presence of God through Jesus. So we are a royal priesthood. And so although we don't have any priests, we are all priests in that sense because we can all come into the presence of God. It's good sometimes to pray with somebody, so it can be helpful, but we don't need somebody to take us into the presence of God. You don't need a church leader to take you into the presence of God. You don't need somebody else. We can pray to help each other, but not to take us into the presence of God. You can go into the presence of God through Jesus. We have a holy nation. Whatever nationality you are, if you're a Christian, you've got a dual nationality because our citizenship is in heaven. The nations all around, the world's in a mess. Our country's in a mess. The countries around, the world is in a mess. God's kingdom is secure and it is strong, and that is not in a mess. We've got a strong certainty when we put our feet on the ground that Jesus has given us. We are God's special possession. He loves us. He loves us. We are special to him. And we've been called that we may declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his wonderful light. We might have had a dark past. God has called us out of that into his kingdom. What a privilege to be part of his kingdom. We need to believe that we are a chosen people. We are people chosen by God. When he calls into new things, believe it. Is he calling you to something new at Hope House? Has he got something that you holding back and you're thinking, well, I don't really know. Step out of the boat, walk on the water. And if you fail, if you start to sink, call on him and he'll pull you up. Listen to what he's saying and don't pick back up the labels that he's taken off us. As we looked at Gideon and at Jacob, we see that God can and does use ordinary people. He uses his people who he's called. None of us are left out. Wherever we are this morning, if you know Jesus, you are called. You are called to be part of his plan and his purpose. Who are you? Who am I? Who are we? We are children of God. We're called by him because he's got a plan and purpose for our lives. For each one of us, whoever we are, there's no one sat here who's the exception. If you think, well, I can see that's true for him, for her, but it's not true for me, then you're wrong. It applies to you. It applies to you most of all if you think like that. Because God chooses the weak things to put to shame the things of this world. Being part of the church, and if the band can make their way back, please. Being part of the church, whether it's here at Hope House or whether the wider church, means that we are called and chosen by God. He loves us. There's not some people called and some people not called. There's not some who are God's special possession and some who aren't God's special possession. And it's time to believe it. It's time to shake off the labels. It's time to shake off the past and to realize that we're not the one person that this doesn't apply to. Whatever our circumstances that we are facing right now, we are called, we are chosen, we are loved. And we are called for service into his kingdom. So God has called us to be active, to work, to be part of serving in his kingdom. And that applies for us all who know Jesus as Lord. Maybe you don't know Jesus. And you think, what's this all about? Well, speak to somebody. Talk to somebody. Ask one of us, what does it mean to know Jesus? And we'd love to tell you about him. If you're online, if you're watching online, then just send a message. The details should be on the screen. And you can contact us and just say, tell me more about what it means to know Jesus. But know that he loves you. Know that he's got plans and a purpose for you. If you're a Christian this morning, then you can be part of that. If you're not a Christian this morning, then you can step into that and be part of God's plan for your life. Amen.